Welcome to the New England Take on WKXL 1450 AM, 103.9 FM, and NHTalkRadio.com. I'm AJ Kierstead, your host. And second week of the show, I'm very excited to have a kind of the other side of my life join me on the radio station. My full-time job is over at the University of New Hampshire Franklin Pierce School of Law, where I've worked for over 11 years now, and one of the people that I've been honored to work with all this time is Buzz Scherr, who I'm very happy to have join me. His history is done. His career's covered a lot of different fields, from criminal law, international criminal law, which is a program that the law school has, and civil rights, which we're really going to focus on privacy, civil rights and privacy in the latter half of the episode. But thanks for joining me today.
Delight to be here. Always willing to help out.
So I want to start off with you have a big personality, Buzz. It's a very polite way of saying this.
I'm shy and retiring, I think.
Yes, exactly. So I was really fascinated to hear when you were talking to some students recently during the law school's admitted student day about how that's the opposite of how you were when you were younger. You were very reserved. So I'm very curious, what led you to want to even get into the field of law?
Well, I actually, you're right. I was very, very shy. I had polio when I was a little kid, and that really sent me inward, for lack of a better way of putting it. And I was shy all the way through high school, all the way through college. I graduated from college. I didn't, I was a child of the 70s. I graduated, 60s really. I graduated from college in 74, but, the first half of the 70s was really part of the 60s. I graduated from college. I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I worked as a commercial organic farmer for a while. I picked apples with Jamaican migrant workers in southern Vermont. I ran a historic farm museum in far western Massachusetts. I really wanted to be a historian, to get my PhD in history, because I was a colonial American history major. But I was smart in a practical way. And I figured out that to be a historian, until I wrote the history book that would make me millions of dollars for that, which actually might take a little while, I'd have to teach for a living. And there was no way in hell I was going to teach for a living, stand up in front of people and talk, because I was way, way, way too shy. So, I was also interested in environmental issues. I was very committed politically to environmental issues and morally. So I said, I can be a lawyer. I can be a one-on-one lawyer. I can be a transactional lawyer. I can be an administrative lawyer. I don't have to talk in front of people.
Yeah, that's something a lot of people don't consider in the field of law. They always think of law and order. You got the prosecutor, you got the defense attorney. I mean, there's a lot of industries that having a JD is tremendously useful or required.
Yep. Probably the majority of lawyers never show up in court, or show up in court for, one hearing. They write contracts, they do transactions, they advise their clients, they write wills, they create trusts, they do real estate transactions. Corporate lawyers rarely show up in court. They have a separate department for the litigators.
You might be in trouble if they enter.
Right. Yeah. Well, litigation is when things went bad.
Yeah.
That's what litigation is. You're already in trouble if you're litigating a contract you had with another company, because that means it fell apart. Somebody didn't write a good contract, or somebody violated the contract. So I knew I could be a lawyer without having to stand up, I thought, in front of people and talk for a living. So I went to then the premier. I did a year working as a paralegal in a big, Wall Street law firm, which was very interesting and convinced me I didn't want to be involved in corporate law. So I went to the top environmental law school in the country at the time, and still one of the top ones, Vermont Law School, intending to be an environmental lawyer. I was still very, very shy in law school, consistent with my past. This is a true story. I tell my students this story, they don't believe it. because I'm less shy now. And I said, whenever I was called on in a large class, like over 20 people was a large class to me, really over 15 people. Even though I had done all the reading, I always knew the answer to the question the professor was asking. I was the top of my class in law school for 3 years. I would always say when called on in a large class, I'm sorry, I haven't done the reading, just so I wouldn't have to answer the question. So shyness and fear of public speaking continued throughout law school. I took a course called Administrative Procedure in law school. My first semester of my second year, law school is a 3-year program, which is one of the core courses for being an environmental lawyer. Because everything is dealt with in administrative hearings and administrative process.
Government agencies, committees.
Exactly. God, was it a boring class. And what was sad about it was taught by my favorite teacher, and it was just an insanely boring class. And excuse me, let me turn my phone off. Sorry about that. So I said, all right, I'm not going to be an environmental lawyer because I'm not going to do this on a daily basis for a living. Just take me out back and shoot me now. So I shifted over. I said, all right, I'll be, my other political interest was representing poor people who have historically very limited access to the legal system. They're getting evicted, they're getting their heat shut off, they're getting denied Social Security benefits. I mean, you can just go on and on how poor people have very limited access to the legal system and really gets kind of screwed by the legal system on a regular basis, to use the formal legal term. And so the rest of my 3 remaining semesters at law school, I took a bunch of courses designed to do that. I did a clinical program, did a lot of work fighting the Social Security Administration. So I was really ready I loved it. I loved the work. I was really ready to be a civil legal services lawyer. The year I graduated from college, Ronald Reagan was sworn into office. One of his campaign planks had been to defund all the civil legal services programs in the country because they had sued him so much when he was governor of California. He wasn't completely successful, but all the bad timing for me, all the jobs dried up. So I was well prepared to do nothing.
As a 2010 undergrad graduation year, I understand.
Same exact thing. And so there I was. My wife was pregnant. She had a job working as a public defender in New Hampshire. So we moved to New Hampshire, and our daughter was born, and I was a stay-at-home dad, kind of looking for a job, but I didn't really want to. I was on the law review. I was number 1 in my class in law school, so I could get interviews at all the big law firms in New Hampshire, but I just had no interest in working there, so I never interviewed well at all. And then the public defender program, which was still relatively young, it was still only about 4 or 5 years old, was looking to open an office in Keene. They didn't have an office in Keene. They had offices in Manchester, Concord, and Exeter, or Stratham, really. And we're starting one in Laconia, but otherwise they didn't have an office in Keene, and they needed one to handle cases out there.
You talk about an area that's isolated and wouldn't have access to legal services otherwise. Keene's beautiful. I got my undergrad at Franklin Pierce. I love it out there, but there's nothing when you leave the city limits.
Oh, very much so. It's very rural, which didn't bother me because I grew up in far western Massachusetts. I went to law school in Vermont, so and I love representing the rural poor. So I got an interview with the then director of the program because we had a talk at one of the program parties. I think over Christmas we had a talk at the Christmas party for the entire New Hampshire public defender program at the director's house, which encompassed 13 lawyers, putting aside the director. So it was a very small program. By contrast, it's now got like over 130 lawyers.
Oh, wow.
Um, so we had a talk. He said, just because my wife brought me to the party, what are you doing? I said, I'm looking for the job, taking care of the kid. I said, I might have something for you. Set up, call my assistant, and we'll set up an interview. So I did an interview, and we talked for 3 hours. I had never taken 2 of the 3 core courses to be a criminal defense lawyer: criminal procedure and trial advocacy. And I did really horribly in the 3rd course, evidence. That was the only grade I got below a B+. So I was as unqualified a person to be a public defender. Plus, I didn't want to try cases. I didn't want to stand up in front of strangers and try cases. They reared its ugly head again. But it was a job. My wife was making, as a public defender, $13,500. This was in 1982, early 1982. And so we needed money. So I took the job. At the time, we were living in North Ware. And I commuted to Keene every day on Route 9.
Whew, that's a drive.
Then we moved to New Boston. I commuted a different route through, Greenville and, just all this other small, hit Peterborough, and then took 101 to Keene. So I was commuting at least an hour each way. And in the winter, it was a nightmare. But there I was trying cases. And to shorten this a little bit, 13 years later, I then got the job at the law school as a law professor. But it was I loved every second of the 13 years. And I could not have paid a therapist enough money to do forcing myself to speak in public and learn how to speak in public in front of judges and juries in order to help my client. I mean, that was my motivation. That was more important for me to help my client than to the fear of embarrassing myself. And I ended up, so I just held my breath for 3 to 5 years and tried cases. I tried like 30 or 40 cases in my first 4 or 5 years as a public defender, which was a lot of cases because the prosecutors out in Keene, he said, "Oh, we got these." It was me and another guy. Both of us had never practiced law before. I said, "Oh, wow. We got this fresh meat coming in here, So let's give them bad plea offers, and we'll go to trial on everything, and we'll win all our cases." It turned out not to be the case. We both Paul Schweitzer, the lawyer I was out there with, and he still practices in Keene. We ended up trying a ton of cases and winning most of them. Because we worked our butts off and we were better prepared and we investigated cases better. So I loved being a public defender. About 5 years into being a public defender, at least metaphorically speaking, I woke up one day and said, I'm not pretending to be a trial lawyer. I am a trial lawyer and I love it. It's great. And that's what, very long-winded story, but that's what got me to a place where I could manage well my shyness and fear of public speaking. And I was a very good trial lawyer. I won about 2/3 of the cases I tried in front of a jury. I still have nerves every time I do a court appearance. I do them occasionally on pro bono cases. And I'm still nervous before every class I teach at the law school.
All right, we're gonna take a break right here with that little cliffhanger there. I want to touch upon a little bit more on your work as a professor, and I mean, your career is public service. I view education as definitely being in that realm. So we're going to dive deeper into that. You're listening to the New England Take on WKXL 1450 AM, 103.9 FM, and NHTalkRadio.com. I'm your host, AJ Kierstead. If you want to support the show, go to thenewenglandtake.com. We have a Patreon set up. If you want to independently support the show or advertise, definitely check that out there. With podcast feed is also posted. And you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Our handle is New England Take. We'll be right back.